Hey, Dale the Librarian here. Library number 5 is going to be related to government documents, specifically the Department of Labor, and some of the data that they put together is very important and interesting for finding jobs or figuring out how to make yourself qualify for jobs and things like that. Um, so so this is kind of a library lesson light. It's not really attached to anything in the class per se, but it's something that I really wanted. And when I was an undergrad, I wanted to know, how do I find those career things? And I went to the career librarian, or the career library at the time, back in the 20th century sometime. And they had these big books with jobs, and it was really complicated. And I got intimidated, and I walked away without actually talking to anybody. So these days, things are a lot better. It's a lot more interactive, and they realize it's not all just about getting the job, but it might be about like meaning making in the job and all sorts of different things. And I'm showing you because um, not only because I wanted that when I was in school, but it's also something that colleges work a lot with, and libraries work with government documents all the time. So this falls under that library purview. But think of this as library light, where you get to just dazzle me with what you're interested in, um, instead of doing something attached to Frankenstein or something like that. So, oh, this page is giving me, I'm getting car sick looking at this page. Let me scroll down a little bit. Ooh. So, if you go to careers.utah.edu, the University of Utah and most universities and colleges will have like a job placement thing where they will help you get in touch with recruiters and employers. But what if you're in a job that isn't in super high demand, like AI developer for military IT or something like that? Something that was more meaningful for you. And it's, how do you find those things, and how do those things find you? It could be that you have to do an interview with a counselor up there, and they can show you what's going on with the job market or things related to what your degree or your experience is with. And these are really great. Um, they're doing virtual stuff, but I would wait for the end of COVID, when you can go in on campus, hopefully this fall. But I have some other things that I can show you. But these are really, really great, and it's fantastic. How can I say it further than that? Another thing that you can look at is every state is going to have economic reporting where they're talking about the jobs in counties, and they use this as part of like their tax base, or they use this to figure out how they're going to move forward on a particular project that's expensive, and are they going to have enough money in the budget and all that sort of stuff. Part of that is jobs though, and in every state, maybe even in like city levels, you can see, if you like enter a keyword, you can find all those different things in different counties. So I just got back from a trip to the Grand Canyon, and we passed through a town, and I was like, oh, I love this town. I want to live here. And so I looked up jobs in here, and it was like, they can, if I was an electrician or a power line worker, I'd be able to get into that job, no problem. Librarian, not so much. But be that as it may, many states have these. So if you're interested in working in a particular area, it's fun to go in. But sometimes the presentation isn't so great. It's a little bit dry. Another thing that I always recommend is go to the library catalog, and if you type Employment Outlook, um, you get like 18,000 hits. But here we have like, I'm not a chemistry person. How do I find what I'm looking for? You could add keywords, but then you might get stuff that's out of date, and it's hit or miss unless you know what you're looking for. But all the databases that we've been in have probably had something about the trade. So if you go to a trade journal, they're talking about working and being in that profession. So they'll oftentimes have like job ads and things like that. A lot of the trade journals are online these days, and out on the open web. But that's one place to go. But still, I'm just kind of like, I don't know. Magically, though, I was leading somewhere with this. There's the Occupational Outlook Handbook. The United States federal government and every government of countries around the world are very interested in how people are making money, and what they could do to help their country develop. Maybe develop more industries, maybe have the country have a bigger tax base, or they can use this to problem solve and figure out maybe we need to teach more of something or other. So famously back in the 1940s, when World War II ended, and you had all these GIs wanting to do the GI Bill and get their subsidized education, the government was like, "Ooh, I think we need to learn how to make rockets and airplanes and things like that." And so the U.S. government looked at all this data, and then they poured a bunch of money into engineering, famously, and then so on and so forth. But how can you use this info? Oh, first of all, my colleague, one of the GovDocs librarians, I was like, how do they generate this data? Is it just census? It's like, oh, no, it's a lot more than that. There's like economic indicators, there's employment, unemployment. So Department of Labor does a lot of these, but there's some other ones as well. But there's like occupational requirements, workplace industries. There's just like, so many bits of data that they all throw together. It's really fantastic. So, what questions are we going to answer in the library assignment? Let me show you that before we dig in. Okay. This is your library assignment as it appears in my OneNote. I will put it in Canvas. You're going to be answering 4 questions. What's your dream job? What do you want to do? I will allow you to pick anything you want, but you do have to find the URL in that Occupational Outlook. So it has to be like a defined. It has to show up somewhere. And everything under the sun should show up here, unless it's not listed in the US Census. So you're going to be answering that question. That's probably the easiest one. What education do you need? You're in school right now, and so you could use this to figure out, do I need to take different classes to get the job that I want? Or do I need specific experience that I'm building, maybe with an internship or maybe with a specific job while I'm in school? I'd like you to find a degree or classes that you need to take and experience that you need to take, and I'll show you how to find that. Also, I'm a librarian, and there have been times where I've been just like, oh, this librarian thing, I'm so done with it. I'll go and look up similar occupations, and teacher shows up pretty often in that one. And then the next thing is I would like to know, what are your plans to move on from here? So you've listed your dream job and some of the things that it's required for, and at the very bottom I'd like you to list, what are you going to do next to shift your way into that dream job? So Occupational Outlook Handbook, there's like 3 different ways of cruising around here. One is if you know the industry it's in. So say you're really into arts and design, or you're really into education that I cited before, you could go into one of those industries, or even it's called a sector that has several industries in it. That's the boring way to go in, though. I'm a keyword guy. You could go in by pay. So if you go down here, you can browse by highest paying, so you can go for the gold. They should have an indicator on here. As the sociology librarian, you should have an indicator of like the job that makes you the happiest, but they don't. Or the most meaningful or meaning making in a job. They don't have that. Department of Labor. Maybe in the future. So, but you can go by highest paying. You could see what's the fastest growing. So where are the most jobs going to be? It looks like they have a couple of those. And then there's a whole bunch of other things like that. Oh, there's even a teacher's guide. I should have consulted that. So what we would like to do is you can go and buy any of those, or you can just type in your degree. So say, for example, I had a sociology degree, which I don't. You could type in the name of your degree, and it will give you lists of jobs related to that degree. Sociologist, obviously, is going to be at the top. But there's all sorts of different things going on in here. Radiation therapist? I had no idea that a sociologist would be in there. It might be a tangential piece of experience, but it's in there all the same. You could type in the name of a job. So say, for example, you wanted to be this would be so cool, to be a translator, like at the United Nations, where you know like 7 languages and you're translating. You could desire to be a baker. You could desire to be a librarian. God help us all. Right? So you could type in those things. You can also type in specific experience. So I'm going to type in for experience, let's say, oh, you know what? It seems like the experience would be under the name of an occupation anyway. I was going to say special education. Oh, maybe I should do sign language. Maybe that would be. At any rate, you throw those in. Once you find something, let's look up what we're looking at. So I'm going to do high school teacher. Let's say I aspire to be a high school teacher, which I secretly do. I think that would be really cool. And maybe I should never do it. I'll destroy my dreams. So here's your questions. You're going to find what's your dream job. Say high school teacher was my dream job. What education do you need? When you go into this, it gives you some pretty current data, like how much money you can expect to make. This is median pay. So this is, a lot of people talk about teachers not being paid very well, but they often talk about like the lower end, maybe like entry level, whereas people who are in administration also show up in this median. So beware, this is not the entry level. Because I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to be a teacher now. Here's the number of jobs. Here's the job outlook, and it tells you it's growing by 4% every year, and so on and so forth. And there's a little bit of stuff here in these blue links, but there also a lot of those are tabs. So the ones that it's fun to cruise around and read these and go, oh yeah, I think that would be me. Or you might discover like, oh God, I never want to do that. How to become your dream job is where you're going to find education and experience, important qualities, and things like that. So from here, I'd like you to find things that you're interested in and put those in this question mark right here. What education do you need? What experience? And you could put like certificates and qualifications and things like that. Fake enthusiasm. Okay, the next question is, let's see, what's a similar occupation? There's a similar occupations tab. So if you discovered that something you don't want to go to school for 16 years, what else could you do? So for example, if I wanted to be a nuclear physicist, but I only wanted to do the undergraduate degree, you could go in and see other things like that. And here's all the different things you could do. Lots of teaching. Oh, look at that. There's state and area data too. More data than you can shake a stick at. Oh, it was published very recently as well. Isn't that cool? This is very powerful info. And then lastly, what are you going to do next to get there? What I'd like you to do is read through a few of these tabs. This shouldn't take long. And look and see what inspires you. What do you want to do? What's your inspiration? What's next for you? And this is well defined, so it's like a growth area, and you can figure out what contribution that you want to make in your education and your experience, so you can figure out where you're going to go next. Okay,